Hey, what's up? It's Kit. Time for another video. Today, we will talk about light jigging. And before we actually go into light jigging, let me talk about micro. Okay, because a lot of people would say, like, oh, next to this would be micro. We're not going to be talking about micro. Okay, I will include micro in this discussion because you're dealing with rods that actually encroach on, say, micro territory. Okay, for example, you have rods that would be 20 to 80 grams. Okay, the range 20 to 80. 20 is in the micro range. 80, obviously, if you're talking about where the limits are, 40. Okay, for a lot of people, 40 would be considered light jigging. 40 to 100. Okay, 40 to 100. Some, like, I have a rod here that's labeled light jigging from Major Craft, and it says 40 to 120. Okay, so the range is all the way up to 120. So let's just agree on something. Okay, 40 to 100 would be light jigging, because honestly, it depends on the brand. Okay, some brands will say that micro starts at um, you know whatever, 2 grams, 1 gram, whatever, and then it goes all the way to 30. Some say 40. Okay, now even the rods themselves, it's even blurred considerably when you're seeing rods that are just marked max 100 or max 80. So it's kind of confusing. And for me, I don't want to be redundant, because I don't want to make another video showing you the same reel, a different rod, and then I say, like, oh, this is a series on micro jigging. Kind of doesn't make sense, okay? Because, and we will discuss this, it's something that you could use even with this kind of system, especially when you're on shallow water. And this is why I'm mixing it together, okay? So, if you're new to this channel talks about the hows and whys of fishing. We cover everything from big game, ultralight, everything in the middle, including fly fishing. And today, we will formally start the 101 series on light jigging. Okay, so again, just to recap on what we've discussed a few seconds ago, I will be doing micro and light jigging here, but in this video, okay, in this series. But let's just agree as a standard that we will use that 30 grams and below will be micro, 40 and up, or 31 and up to about 100 grams, okay, will be on the light jigging segment. All right, so rods, very, very important, because this is literally your manipulation and your delivery. Okay, this is your manipulation and your delivery tool. Okay, now we'll talk about the delivery tool later, because that's actually a very important segment. Let's talk about manipulation. Okay, so for light jigging, there's good news and bad news. Okay, the good news is, for a lot of people, you could mix fast and slow jigs in. Okay, and obviously there are some brands that would segregate, okay, and be very, very specific. But see, here's the thing: when you're actually fishing in shallow water, all you have to do is just lift the rod, and then that jig will have action. Okay, like a slow jig, because of the depth that you're dealing with, all you have to do is just lift the rod, and guess what? Long fall. And majority of the time, this is the only thing that you need. Okay, for guys that are very, very specific on things, like expert level, great. go ahead and find like a light, slow jigging rod, and guess what? I have them and I use them, and I'm one of those types that actually separate. But this is a 101 video, okay? So down the line, maybe I'll make like a very specific light, slow jigging series. But the fact of the matter is, there are people out there that will buy one or two rods and all they want to do is fish with these. And guess what? This is the kind of segment where you can actually kind of fool around and not be penalized a lot because you're dealing with shallow water, okay? And I'll go so far as say that I have a very little expensive rods in this segment. It means that this is kind of like a playground. Okay. It's not to say that you can just do the wrong things, but because there are a lot more smaller fish than there are bigger fish, your chances of success is also kind of high. So let's just get that out of the way. Okay. Now, because you're dealing with shallower water, it means that even if you're kind of using not so right equipment that are kind of crucial when it comes to deep water fishing or deeper water fishing or actually bigger applications, they can work. Here's a very good example. Okay. So this sustain is a high gear. Okay. And like especially for Shimano, I think there's only one reel that is actually slow enough to say that, oh, there's a PG in the 3000 size. I'm not sure which one, but I'm sure there's one. So if anyone knows, drop it in the comment section. Okay. I was looking for a reel from Shimano. I wasn't able to find it, so I went with Daiwa, but I had to modify it. Okay, so this sustain, okay, paired with, let's say, I have a, there we go. This is a relic from the past, and this is actually a very good rod. And I think you could. This was something. This is a model that was available in Australia, and we had a short run here in the Middle East. And actually, I had these over at the shop in Barracuda for to get disposed, but for some strange reason, no one picked it up. And it's so weird because guess what? This is a rod that a lot of people are looking for. This is the Storm Gomoku Kiryu. PE is 0.4 to 1. And it's 6 feet, okay? And it has a maximum jig weight of 40 grams, which means this is one of those that's actually very, very light and would be able to work small jigs like 10 grams. Okay. And this will work. Okay. So normally I would put a slower jig on this. Now, if you're dealing with water that's 30 meters or less, guess what? You could slow jig with this. Okay. You could put a 20-gram slow jig on this. And because of the distance from the top to bottom, it's so easy to just open the bail, okay, let it go. And because it's, if you're dealing with slower currents in shallower water, 20 grams would get you to the bottom fast, believe it or not. And then you can actually slow jig with this. So this is an exception. Okay, now, fast reel with the slow jig, that'll work. Okay, now with the fast jig, all you have to do is just reel slower, and then that's it. So it works. Okay, now you want to make it work even better? Guess what? This reel is slow. Okay, and I got this actually for this application. Okay, because I was so tired of reeling and then bang, the jig was there. So I found this reel. I have a video on this actually. Modified it with the drag. I modified bearings, modified here, and then this handle. And guess what? I can reel this like I do with my regular jigging, what do you call this? My regular jigging, like my regular jigging outfits for deeper water, and it works. Okay, so very, very important. So 40 grams. Okay, now the upgrade for this, after this model was phased out, the upgrade is called the Emera. Okay, and as you can see, this is green and black. This has green trim, but the regular version of this was actually white and green. Okay, now you have this, and green for the Gomoku series was actually the lightest. Okay, so it's black and green, and I like that it's color coded. You can get the newest version of this rod in Asia, and it is all black. Okay, now the reason why it's all black was because people are complaining about the green. Of all the things to complain, they complain about the color. Okay, now this rod has a capacity of max 80, which means that you can work all the small stuff from 10. Okay, so a little bit of a caveat. At this time, when this was introduced, okay, this time when it was introduced, by the way, you can see here, it's light jigging special, okay? So when this was introduced, the range of jigs that Rapala had, or Storm, okay, under the Storm banner, the smallest one was 15 grams. So that would be the Gomoku micro jig, okay? So that, and then for the Koika, it was also 15. And then it goes up, okay? So the range that it had was 15, pretty much, 15, 20. I think there was a 25. No, like 20, 30, 40, like that, okay? So from 15 and above. So that's the kind of jigs, those were the kind of jigs that were actually designed for this, okay? Because there's no rod company that would design just the rod alone. They base it on a line of jigs. So for Storm, they based it on their line of jigs. And at that point, the jigs that were available were 15 and up. Okay? The Koika itself, just the Koika alone, okay, the range is from 15 to 250. Okay? So this caters to all jigs up to 80 grams. And this is why I'm saying that micro and light, it's a range, and it's very, for me, it's very difficult to actually separate them because like rods like these exist. Okay, now Major Craft specifically mark this as light jigging spec. Okay, there, light jigging spec, and it has a range of 40 to 120. Okay, now it works really well. Again, this is a rod that I use specifically for fast jigs, and it works really well. Again, you can see that these are all spinning, right? So we'll actually talk about more about the function of the rod in a bit. Right now, I'm just showing you guys what's what the range is. Okay. Now, a very good example. Now you're talking about slow jigs and all that, right? So, this is a Zen Zagan, okay? And this is my rod for slow jigs up to 100 grams. And this rod is super, super good, okay? And it doesn't break the bank, okay? But this is one of those, I have rods, okay, that are in the lower segment. But this is literally like one of the easier to use rods, and it's fun to use. Okay, the action's really good. So it says here the specs is like max 100 grams. So in reality, I could actually use something about 60 to make it move really nicely. And with this, I pair this. Okay, so the Conquest PG I use with this specifically when the conditions are kind of difficult, but I only use this in a deeper water. So when I'm faced with at least 30 meters, this goes out. Okay, so anything that's shallower, I don't even bother using this. Okay, now here's a rod that I use for both fast and slow, and still using the Conquest 200. Okay, this has a range of 20 to 80, and this is the Salty Stage Light Jigging. So this is the Salty Stage KRX. It's an older model, Abu Garcia. Now, in the introduction, I actually said that if you don't know this rod, you've been living under the rock. Okay, so this particular rod is important because this is probably a really good entry level JDM, and their craftsmanship is actually really good considering the price that you pay for them. Okay, so you have a 2-piece butt joint rod that is very, very light. The componentry is actually really good, and I'm not sponsored by these guys, of course, but the thing with this rod is that it's super, super good for the price that I got it for, which was like what, about 150 US. It's really good, and I love using it. I think I have one or two, no, 2 or 3 of these. The action is just right, and when it comes to shallower water, I use this more than I use this. Okay, and again, everything from 20 to 80 works on this so well. Now again, we go back to the range. 20, even 15 on this actually works. Now I've used 10 on this and actually caught really good fish. I had to change the reel to something lighter. Okay, so basically when I'm doing something that's a bit more on the micro side, I choose a different reel. Okay, so again, with that range, now it's very difficult to actually separate them and say like, oh, this is exclusively for micro and this is exclusively for what do you call this, for light. You can, but the fact of the matter is there's an intersection there, and most of the time you'll be working within that intersection, because guess what, when you're fishing, okay, when the boat goes from shallow, like the depths, right, it goes from, let's say 30, and then it goes to 15 meters, you're still gonna be either using like a really heavy jig, and here's a very good scenario. You're on a kayak and then you're fishing a ledge, you're drifting it. Okay, now what happens is that when you reach shallower water, you're not gonna grab a different rod, you're gonna change the jig. So it makes sense that you're actually fishing both light and micro in this instance. So if you're fishing on a boat exclusively and then you're targeting exact depths, then you can be very specific. That's what I'm trying to say. Okay, now as far as slow jigging and fast jigging are concerned, let's go back to that, because that's kind of important. That a lot of people are probably looking for that information. Now, when you're dealing with shallower water, let's say 30 meters, even 50 and below, the wait time for your jig to actually go down, especially when the currents are actually low. Okay, and if you're dealing with shallower water, you're also dealing with less current. In deeper water, what happens is that you'll have two currents. Okay, there's the surface current and then there's the bottom current. And guess what? Sometimes you're even dealing with three or four different currents. Okay, so each going in like a different direction. It depends on the contour of the bottom. If you're fishing in shallow water, you're only dealing with the surface area or the surface current. And that has a lot of implications. So which means that when you're dealing with shallower water, your jig, okay, will fall and hit bottom faster. Let's say even if you're using thicker line, because you're also dealing with currents that are of less velocity. So what happens is that the sensitivity of the system to environmental factors becomes less. And the requirement to reach bottom and hold bottom and stay vertical is actually also lessened. Okay, so all I'm saying is that the importance of being vertical is less when it comes to shallower water fishing. Okay, all you need is to really reach the bottom, and then you can work the jig up. Okay, and this is why it's so appealing. This is why this type of jigging is very appealing. Now, as far as the rods are concerned, you can interchange them. And I already said that you can actually use one rod for both. Because guess what? When you're shallow water fishing, again, okay, when you're shallow water fishing, you're most likely to change the jig more than you would with a rod. Okay? And more than likely, you'd only have the luxury to actually take a couple of rods with you, because there's no need. Like literally, there's no need to take 5 or 4, you know? And most of these shallow water trips are actually day trips. So I could get very specific with this rod for fast jigging and this rod for slow jigging when it's in deeper water. So if I'm dealing with, remember, these are all rods that go up to 100, okay? One 120 and one 100. So these, okay? Now, for deeper water, I could go very specific. For shallower water, it's a playground. So, this particular rod, I can mix and match, and then I could use it for slow jigging. I could use it for fast jigging. Okay? And what's the difference between an overhead and a spinning rod in this segment? Very, very little. Okay? Again, it's like a playground that you could afford to experiment. Namely because for this type of fishing, there's just a lot more shots at fish. Okay? So, again, you could use fast jig or slow jig, and then there's no distinction. Some brands will have a distinction on slow, specific slow jigging rods. Micro slow, light slow, you know. And they work, but those are for very specific situations. Now, if you are just starting out, don't confuse yourself, okay? Get a very good rod, okay? Because still, lightness is sensitivity. So still get a good rod. Now, again, this is a very good example of a rod that's very cost efficient, that works really well. This one is the same, okay? There's an overhead version of this, and this has a special function, okay? So, get a rod like this, and then you could put a good reel. Good equipment will take you farther. So when you're choosing a rod, okay, choose a rod that has a, let's say, a range. 20 to 80 is a very good place to start, because you don't want to, the thing with I don't know if you've noticed, but when I mentioned the ones that go at 100 and over, they're very specific. Okay, you're actually entering both ends of the spectrum, on anything. Okay, you're actually entering specialist territory. In the middle, it's kind of like a playground. Okay, so this is right smack in the middle of things. So you have 20 to 80, that's the range. And then, you have something that goes over 100, and it's specifically something I use for deeper water. Now, there are rods that are made, let's say, this is a very good example, Max 40, for the bottom segment or the lighter segment, and this is a bit more specialized. Okay, so the actions are a bit more specialized, and they're actually also kind of rare to find. If it's kind of rare to find, it's kind of expensive. Okay, you're also dealing with like thinner line and all this. Now, stiff rods, stiff rods, very good. What do you call this? Stiff rods. If you use jigs that are too small or too light for the rod, what happens is that it will tumble when you jig them. Okay, and when you jig them, they tumble and snag your leader. And when it snags your leader, the fish comes along and bites the jig. The leader gets cut together with the jig. Bye bye. Okay, it's not to say that it won't happen with a regular swimming jig. Okay, but if the jig tumbles and then the assist hook hooks on the leader, it won't swim correctly. If the fish comes along and bites it, great, you got a strike and lost the jig. But in most cases, the jig won't swim and it just won't hook fish. So it's very good practice to actually keep the weights or the range on the rods within the bounds of the rod. So if it says max 40, put put nothing over 40. And let's say, if it says 20 to 80, if you put 10 grams there, you have to know what you're doing. You have to slow your retrieve down, or slow the way you're working it, so that it doesn't tumble. The moment you actually flick that tip, the chances of the jig tumbling and snagging your leader is higher. Okay, so ranges on rods matter when it comes to this, because of that, the tumbling. So the jigs will not work. Okay, one of the biggest reasons for, and this is also the problem with this range of rods, is the fact that you experience a lot of breakage. Now, as someone who's working for a manufacturer, and we were selling these things, the problem was that a lot of people were breaking the rods, and we found that the rods were breaking because they were lifting the fish with the rod. Don't do that. Okay, so again, 101 series, so I'm thinking that you guys are like new to this whole thing. Never lift, okay, never lift the fish and put it on the boat like that. That's one. Two, never let people hold the tip of your rod to get to the line. That's like, I broke a rod like that at the start of a fishing trip. Imagine how unpleasant that is. And the guy didn't even pay for the rod. And even if he did, that particular rod you can't find here. So it's gonna get really more expensive. So anyway, so that's just don't, because Look at the tips of these rods. They're very thin. Okay? And when you're holding the tip, okay, when you're holding the tip, so some people actually hold the tip, okay, hold the tip, and then like that to get to the line, okay. Ooh, no, 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 no. Okay, the best way is for you to actually just keep the line pressured so the rod is bent, and then you walk backwards so that the guy can actually hold the leader and then land the fish for you. Okay. Um, these rods, most of them at least, you can pressure the fish with. Okay, so you can work them and bend the rod while you're fighting the fish. Except for those that are very specific slow jigging rods. Okay, especially from a Japanese manufacturer. They're not designed for fighting the fish with the with the bent blank. Same as the bigger versions. You could, but if it breaks, then that's on you. And this is also the reason why I'm saying that if you're new, don't go for those specific slow jigging rods, because these light jigging rods are actually uh, they're kind of made for being a little bit abused. I wouldn't say like abuse it to the max, but they can take a bit of abuse. Um, we'll talk more about the reels later on. But okay, so if you're in Asia or if you have access to buying rods in Asia, this the newest version of this is still available. It is all black. Okay. Now, the thing that you'd notice with this is that it has a short butt. Okay. And this is for a very special reason. There are some rods there's some guys that actually like longer rods, but are longer butts. But see, with this one, it's actually short because you can work the jig faster, okay, with this, like that. Okay, and there's a specific it's called the machine gun jigging. It is for fast jigs like these, okay, or the hold on, let me show you the specific jig that it's done on. The Gomoku Slim. So the Gomoku Slim. So this jig with this retrieve is killer. Okay, so all you do is actually move it really fast, and then you reel really slow. Okay, now what that is like walking the dog, but you're walking the dog and it stays in place, but there's a technique when you're casting lures and stuff. It's lures like the Zara spook, and walking the dog is the surface of the water. Okay, and then walking the dog means that your lure is doing a zigzag. Okay, and that's achieved by reeling and pumping at the same time, and there's a specific cadence for that. Some guys are really good doing that, and it's probably the hardest retrieve or hardest way to work a lure. And if you actually know how to do that, it benefits you a lot. So with that type of jigging, what happens is that it moves like that a lot. Okay, let me get that jig. So it makes the jig move like that, but it doesn't move up fast. So like that, and it just drives the fish bonkers. So when they're active, right, and then you use something like that, and then you just go ta 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 ta, boom. Now, with a longer butt, it's very difficult to do. It's cumbersome. So they made the rods have a shorter butt, especially for these small ones. Now, I'll go out on a limb and actually say that when it comes to this segment, Asian style rods take the cake for me because you can really like fight the fish with them. Okay. Now with the Japanese rods, you kind of baby them, kind of, don't want to abuse it because they're a bit fragile. So for me, when it comes to this segment of fishing, okay, I really like Asian style rods more. This is why I don't have a kind of like expensive stuff. I prefer to stay within this cheaper range because I can abuse the equipment and actually have fun. Now, the pressure that you can put on one of these things when you hook something big is actually quite big, immense actually. So when you hook something, I'd rather have like when you hook something big, and guess what, guys? Elephants eat peanuts. Okay, so there are times when you actually hook something big, and with an Asian style rod, you can put a lot of pressure. Now, if you're going specific and you're buying, a very specific slow jigging rod for this, and you hook something big, boy, you better hope you know how to fight the fish. Now, there are some excellent rods, like take for example the Deep Liner Bit series. Those are excellent rods. There's the Poseidon. Okay, the Poseidon slow jerker has a 20 to 60. That is just great. But guess what? Even I would be afraid to actually use those and then hook something big and trying to pressure a big fish with that kind of reel or with that kind of rod. It's actually very scary because when you break that, and when it comes to these things, because it's so they're thin, it's easy to break stuff. So yeah. Anyway, if you want these types of, and I have to say these rods are actually there's a lot. Okay, now if you want a rod that you just want to start with, okay, I could recommend the new Emera, and it's black. Okay, I find that right now the black ones, they're okay, but I'd much rather have the green ones. I mean, like, people were complaining that the green looks ugly and stuff like that, but in a sea of rods, like take for example for me, when I have them all in the rod holder, I could easily identify the ones that have like a different color, so I know that that's the rod that I want, rather than actually hunting around for that. Now, if I didn't want this color, guess what? This is foam. I could dye this black and it's done. Okay, but if it's black, that's it. So you guys are stuck with the black Emera now just because a lot of people are complaining like, oh, I don't like green. So okay, you can get the Emera in Asia. Okay, I think you can message Lure Heaven. I asked some of my colleagues before, and they said like they recommended Lure Heaven. Okay, so that's one, and you could also message East Tackle if you want, that kind of rod, the Emera. They're not awfully expensive, but I guess like it's the shipping that's going to get it. But there's no other way to get the what do you call this? Get away with that. Now, if you want one of these, you have to actually look in Japan. I guess there's newer versions of this, but the advantage is actually it's two-piece. Okay, as I think I put this on too much, but this is two-piece. Oh, there we go. This is two-piece, and it ships less, I believe. Okay. Now, these are for the money. These are excellent rods, and I've caught so much with this particular rod. Okay, and after this, I didn't see the sense of actually upgrading to a more expensive rod because guess what? Just with this rod alone, it's the performance have been really really nice, and for the money that you get it, the componentry that it has, the workmanship and everything, It's great. But the problem is, this is not, even if it's Abu Garcia, it's not sold in the US. It's exclusively JDM. I think in Australia, you actually have some sellers that sell this. I would recommend that you look at Amazon. Okay, I'll put a link in the description below for a search on Amazon, and then click it, go through and see exactly what you're looking for. But from time to time, you kind of get lucky. Okay, the best help I could give you is actually do a search, so at least you know that the search is actually correct. Okay, so that's the best thing I could do for you guys. But yeah, I mean, I could wholeheartedly recommend this for people that are just starting out. These are like really good for the money. Whatever you save up on, buy a good reel. Okay, so for these, you can have a you can have one of these as a standard. Really, really good. I still use them. These days you'll most likely find me use something like this. Okay, and this is the Studio Ocean Mark L35. We'll talk more about these in obviously the next video is going to be on reels, right? So we'll talk more about these and more in the next video. But for now, that is it. And I really hope that you've learned something. If you've learned something, give it a thumbs up. Share this video for those of you guys that have fishing buddies, family, or whatever that, and friends that are also kind of looking forward into this. This is, wow, a long video. Amazing. Now, if you want to support the channel, buy the cap so that the branding actually spreads offline. You can find the caps on the bottom of the video. And of course, memberships. It's a big thing because it really helps the channel move forward. It supports the channel. It supports me so that, I could continue making a lot more of these videos. But that is it for this. Thanks so much for watching and hanging out with me. I'll see you in the next one. Class dismissed. All right. So if you've stuck around to the very end of this, a lot of people actually turn it off after, like, I say my bit and all that. But for you guys that actually stuck around, here's a bonus for you. Okay. So this is a general type rod. Okay. And, it's actually suited for a 4,000 sized reel. Now, this is literally my favorite all around spinning rod. And I've caught a lot of fish on this offshore and onshore. Okay. This is 7.5 feet in length. Oh, no, 7 feet. Okay. It has a line range of 6 to 12 and up to 30 grams. Okay. Max 30-gram rod. So here's the thing, right? If I'm on a kayak or on a boat and I use this, um, there's a technique that you should actually be aware of. So now this is literally a casting rod, not a jigging rod. It's an all-arounder, right? But when you cast this out with a jig, let's say you're looking for snapper or whatever, some bottom fish, and you're fishing in uh, waters that are not familiar with you, and let's say you're on a boat, you have a lot of people that are fishing on one side, and you want fishing that's kind of not disturbed, okay? Or you want to fish waters that are not disturbed yet. So when you're jigging, this is your boat, okay? And your drift is going this way, okay? So you're drifting this way. A lot of people would position themselves on the down current side, okay? So your boat is like that. A lot of people would position themselves there because when they drop, their line goes away, okay? But new water, new areas are here because it's drifting like that, okay? So what happens is if you position yourself at that side, which is called the uptide side, okay, you have one of these, okay? You have one of these. And this is an HG. You could use an XG. The faster the reel, the better, okay? And this is entirely dependent on the rate of the drift. But don't use a PG for this. It's a technique that is better serviced with faster reels. So you cast it out, shoom, as far as you can. And then when you're moving, the boat is moving, you're actually moving towards the lure because you're casting it in the what do you call this? The area that you're traveling to. So what happens is that your boat is drifting to, if you cast your lure here, your boat is drifting towards the lure. So that's why you need an XG or an HG. You reel and then you bump the bottom. Okay? Just hop the bottom, take off the slack, hop the bottom, okay? The fish will grab it and more than likely they'd go towards you. So the tap is barely detectable. Just like that, line would get slack. You need to wind as fast as you can and set the hook when you do this, okay? Now, remember that when you're fishing like this, the best way I could do this, if you're a freshwater fisherman, it's like fishing soft plastics. That's it. And that is a very deadly technique, okay? So what you could do is actually cast like on one side here. You can fan cast because guess what? More than likely, if you're doing this, you're the only person that's doing it, okay? So bonus for you guys, and this is something big. This is a technique that you use on a boat, on a kayak, and all that, and it works so well. It's one of the best techniques to use when you're using a jig called the Sea Falcon Pesce, okay? And that jig is like super devastating when used for this. There, some jigs work better than others. For slow jigs, especially, this is a very, very good way because remember, when you're using slow jigs, what happens is that when you lift it up, it jumps up, And then the action is when it goes down. So hopping a slow jig like this, dynamite. The biggest problem is, of course, you're exposed to snags. So what I do is just put the hooks like this and just at the top. Just at the top. Okay? So there we go. Just like that. You cast it out and then hop it on the bottom. Very, very, very effective. Alrighty, that's it. Scram.